and good evening. I'm Melisa Idris. Welcome to Consider This. This is the show where we want you to consider and then reconsider what you know of the news of the day. Are you aware of how your state budget is being managed? Well, as a citizen, you have the right to be informed on how your money is spent and to demand stronger oversight by independent institutions. So the Malaysian Open Budget Index, or MyOBI, is an initiative driven by the think tank IDEAS Malaysia, and it aims to shine a light on how transparent and accountable our state governments are with their budget processes. So today on the show to discuss this further, I have Alissa Rode, who is the Senior Manager of Research at IDEAS Malaysia. She's the lead researcher for Malaysia for the Open Budget Survey. And Michelle Ng, member of the Selangor State Legislative Assembly for Subang Jaya, also a member of the Selangor State Public Accounts Committee. Both of you, welcome to the show. Thank you so much for joining me to talk a little bit more about the Malaysia Open Budget 2024. If I may begin with you, Alissa, can you explain to me the core objectives of MyOBI? How exactly do you measure state budgets transparency, if I may?
All right. Thanks, Melissa. So we set up MyOBI actually in 2022 and had an inaugural and pilot run then. And this is the second run of the results. And what we want to do really is set up a national benchmark for state budget transparency to ensure that states are providing the information that is needed on the budget to the citizens as well as to the State Legislative Assembly for oversight and for people to participate. What we measure, we look at not just the budget speech, which is what most people would know from the news, but the detailed estimates of the budget, which is where all the breakdown of the revenues and expenditures are. And that's the most important document, really. The supply bill and the enacted budget, the supply enactment after it's passed, the budget in law, the year-end report, so how the state has implemented the budget, and the audit report, which would show, the accuracy of the financial reporting of the state.
So 2022 was kind of the first run at it. What was happening before then? Was anyone really tracking if states across the country were actually complying with all these requirements?
I would think not really, because very little attention is shown on state budgets. Even in the news nationally, you would maybe see one article or two on state budget announcements. So when we started this, we found that many states did not release budget estimates. Even in the current round, only 7 out of 13 states actually put their budget estimates online while the debate is ongoing.
Right. Michelle, let's I want to ask you, that's interesting that Alissa raised the point that there's a lot more attention given to federal budgets, and we can kind of all agree the media covers it minute by minute kind of commentary, and citizens after that look at what's in it for me with the federal budget. But can you maybe explain to us why it's important that we also, as citizens, pay attention to state budgets? Why is it important that we do so?
Yeah, so the states get the less sexier version in terms of jurisdiction, right? But it's very relevant because it's your day-to-day.
Yes.
So things like JKR's budget, Jabatan Kerja Raya, Jabatan Perairan dan Saliran Selangor, which deals with your river and your drainage. For Muslims specifically, Jaya's budget comes from the state, and it has to do with education and allocation to build places of worship, which is also very important. Forestry, which given climate change is now increasingly important. So with now IDEAS doing the My Open Budget Index, I'm glad that some attention is now being paid to the state, and hopefully in the upcoming sitting we'll get a little bit more attention than what we're used to get.
Can you describe the culture of how state lawmakers approach the budget process? Maybe not just state lawmakers, but also the kind of ecosystem, right? What was it before? Before IDEAS shone a spotlight on the need for accountability and transparency, but what was the process like?
So it's very hidden in a sense that it really depends on the initiative of each state assemblyman and what they try to lobby for, right? Whether it's for a specific policy or a specific project, and then it depends on how well you know certain people to get things across and whether that person would in the end put that as part of the budget, right? So it depended on that. But now we do see some level of engagement, which internally is done very well. But I think there might be a question later on how else we can improve it, which, before this.
Okay. All right, so that was before, and now IDEAS is really leading the charge at trying to get more people to pay attention and demand for accountability and demand for transparency. Tell me about the results of the MyOBI 2024. Who did well? Who did poorly? You have to name and shame them.
All right. So we rank the states for transparency, and we have 3 groupings: those who have substantial disclosure, so that's you're in the green, and then minimal disclosure, that's yellow, like some information but it's not great, and then insufficient disclosure where just too little is given. And Terengganu and Selangor tied for first place this year with 76 marks apiece.
That's out of 100, right?
Yes, out of 100. We take an average out of the questions that we track. And what the top states would provide are key budget documents, including the budget estimates, and they would break down the expenditures to the department level and even the program level, so you can see exactly what is being spent, and you can track specific departments like Jabatan Perairan or projects. And as I said, only 7 out of 13 states provide these budget estimates at all, and all 7 of them would be in the top half, and the 6 that did not are in the bottom half of the ranking. So that's how important it is to provide estimates to the public. No states published all the documents this year, unfortunately. Terengganu hit it last year, but this year they missed the year-end report. It will probably be out at some point, but what we track is whether it's out timely, so that people can access it in a meaningful way and give feedback, right? And what is good is that nearly all states have a citizens budget. So except for Sabah, this means that maybe on their Facebook or social media, they have some infographic, at least to show people some of the key figures, right, of what's being spent. And that's very accessible and easy. And also, for the states with the lowest score, so it's the name and shame part now, right? In the red are Perlis, Kelantan, and last 2, Kedah and Pahang. Yeah.
Does it have anything to do? Is there a correlation with the size of the budget and how well they are, how much oversight and how much transparency?
There isn't actually. In fact, if the state budget is smaller, it would be easier to track and give the details. Right. Negeri Sembilan has the 3rd, I think, smallest budget in terms of expenditure, but it is 3rd in the budget transparency rankings.
Okay. Just to go on to the ones that didn't perform as well, what did they do? Where were the biggest kind of gaps in terms of performance or accountability?
Yeah, I think missing the budget estimates, because many of our questions...
That's the most important.
Ask about like what details are available there, whereas for the other documents, right now we are only tracking, well, are they available or not in the first place? They may provide a budget speech, but that is insufficient. And for example, Kelantan, the budget documents are only available online through password, and that's not considered publicly accessible. Someone has to go and be given that password by the state government to access it.
I don't think you can consider that public if it's password protected. Just one more question about Selangor. Selangor tied with Terengganu at 76. What did Selangor and Terengganu do well this year compared to, say, last year? Was Terengganu the top of the list last year?
Yes, Terengganu was top of the list last year because it hit all the budget documents, whereas Selangor was missing the supply enactment, I think. The budget law, which is a very easy win, and Michelle can share more about that. But this year, Terengganu, like I said, missed the year-end report. Both do well in providing details in the budget estimates. So you can actually see the structure of the departments and the expenditure.
Michelle, what did you think of Selangor's performance in terms of budget transparency this year? Talk to me about what that process is like when you go through that kind of detailed budget assessments and the role of an adun essentially going through that.
Well, what MyOBI does is it tells us very specifically where we're fallen short, right? And that's very helpful because it tells us what the public demands of as well, right? And so we have a checklist as to what to do. And I think by and large, they can be checked off quite easily.
Okay.
So the story behind the supply enactment was it is uploaded onto the Kewangan website instead of the State Assembly website. But as a member of the public, no one addresses their mind to that, right? Who would say that, oh, let me look up on the Kewangan website whether the supply bill is there or not. So it's a matter of changing mindsets in government as well, to think from the perspective of the public and how they want things to be assessed. So as state assemblymen, what we can do is try to lobby our government to do that. So literally after the session in the morning when we did the panel with MyOBI, I went back to the State Assembly because I had a meeting and I spoke to the State Secretary, and then only I knew that it was uploaded onto a different website.
Oh, so you tracked back what happened, was it?
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. So, and she said, yeah, no, it's on a different website. It's already there. It's already part of public domain. And I said, well, no, it's not as accessible as people would like it to be, and no harm. We have the PDF copy, so it's a matter of just uploading it, right? So the state assemblymen all across the country can play a role, and the document is very easy to read. Kudos to IDEAS for making it so simple, and it's just a matter of ensuring that we check off those boxes. But that said, a lot of what is being measured also depends on whether you have some resources set aside to communicate it in a way that the public needs it to be communicated.
I was thinking about that. I was wondering about, on the part of the state legislature, what constraints, what challenges do you face when trying to achieve higher levels of budget transparency? And I'm thinking about something Alissa said a bit earlier about the need for kind of this timely disclosure of budget documents. Talk us through that.
So you do need resources. You need people to create the content and to dissect it. For example, for the citizens' budget, you do need designers to do it, right? You do need someone.
So aduns don't do that, right?
we don't do that. So that's for the government, the civil service to do. Other components, like you need to have enough internet storage to upload your handsets and to upload your documents and to retain it in public domain. So I would imagine for some states that have smaller budgets, that might not be a priority, and maybe for those reasons they might have fallen short this round, because you do need money for that, right? But insofar as transparency and the challenges that we face in trying to up the ante, it has a lot to do with fear, right? I'll be very honest, it has a lot to do with fear. Fear simply because if, for example, I'm going to get public feedback on how I should spend my money next year, am I ready to deal with the barrage of information, right? How am I going to educate the public that this is the domain of what I do, right? And how am I going to explain and get that across? How do I deal with things that come my way that are not really within my jurisdiction, and how do I communicate that to people? Will I disappoint them? Because governments don't want to disappoint, right? So managing expectations is a big component of it. And you have to get the civil service on board that journey as well, because they execute these engagements for you. And by and large, public engagement is the one that I can say almost all states fall short of, which we need to improve.
Is that true?
Yes.
So this is the ability of the public to participate in the budget process, and all states fall short. Maybe hindered by the fear that you
definitely, it's fear.
Yeah, so in terms of public participation, it's a new section that we've added this year to MyOBI, just to find out like what types of activity do the states participate in, right? Formal channels where they allow the public to participate. So these could be online forms. That's the simplest level of gaining feedback and just getting proposals or suggestions from the public, or also complaints on lack of implementation. It could be town halls or two-way dialogues. These would be good. And we did not find evidence of any town halls or two-way dialogues, at least from the social media scans that our partners and assessors did. Negeri Sembilan, Selangor, Pahang and Terengganu did have some online form or survey for opinions. But again, the extent to which this is widely publicized or utilized is not very known.
Yeah. How do we think about that, Michelle? There are so many, I think, stumbling blocks or drawbacks to opening this up to the masses, right, to the public. But you need the participation of the public, so that because the budget involves them clearly, and involves their taxpayers' money. How do you think about that? Practical steps to maybe increase meaningful public participation, yet not being inundated by everyone's backyard request. Fix my pothole first.
Well, I don't think it's impossible. I really don't think so, because with the federal budget, it was done. So we had both deputy ministers travel to each state, and they did at least an internal engagement with the civil service and elected representatives, whether it's in local council or state assemblymen. So it can be done, and so it's just a matter of taking the next step. So what I hope is that we would take the next step that is comfortable enough for us, which doesn't have to be anything too extravagant. It can be like what the Ministry of Education is doing right now, in opening up a form where you can give feedback as to how to improve our education system. So likewise, states that are ready can do that first, because people can be gentler online, right, as opposed to face-to-face.
I've experienced otherwise.
Well, and when they are ready, take the next step and conduct engagements, perhaps with different interest groups, right, according to your jurisdiction, so that it's more focused. And when you're ready and more people are interested and on board, expand that further. Right. So baby steps.
Okay, so who might be the driver of this? Where would this come from?
It would have to come from the State Planning Unit. Okay. That would be the agency that helps plan the budget. So they would naturally be the implementers as well.
Would ADUNs have a role to play in perhaps increasing public participation?
So we do have allocation, community building funds and all that we have, and something that's very accessible, which is what Australia does, is to set aside a small sum to allow the public to say, okay, this is how you should spend this amount of money, right? So the idea is to just do it. It doesn't have to be a large sum. It can be 20,000 ringgit, all right? The idea can be, tell me what to do in this park with 20,000 ringgit, okay, right? And I can say, these are the confines that I have to work within, right? So tell me what I can do, and the best idea wins, and you walk with me on the journey to implement it. So it gets people interested.
Yes, and involved and engaged, because that's what you want in democracy, not just once every 4 years, you vote in a ballot, but to be involved in kind of your community and in your local area. So I also wanted to ask you about the role of the PAC, the state PAC, in terms of oversight. So we want to increase public participation. We want state governments to also submit documents, budget documents, in a timely manner and complete manner. What can the PAC, the state PAC, do to ensure that everyone's in line?
Yeah. So what the PAC needs to do every year is to review the audit report of the year before. And what this audit report does is summarizes how each agency in the state spends the money that is given to them, whether there are any discrepancies, and it goes into a lot of detail. So where you know that a certain agency has not performed as well, the PAC can then call them up to explain, right? And then certain things like, swindling of funds might come up, or some budgetary or restructuring problem that happened last year caused them to lose their standing this year might come up. So what the PAC can then do is to summarize all these findings and table it to the State Assembly as a report, and then it will be opened up for debate. So that increases oversight because the agencies know that this is a yearly exercise and someone is watching over them, right?
Okay, so it's also a deterrent to any kind of mismanagement or wastage in the future, is it? I see, okay. Alissa, I do want to ask you, so when you think about the MyOBI, because you said that you added this public participation part from last year's to this year's, how do you see it evolving more to make the process bigger, wider, more holistic, to kind of further enhance budget transparency?
Okay, that's a very good question. Actually, this MyOBI's method is adapted from the Open Budget Survey, which is the international benchmark standard for budget transparency, which countries are measured up against, and that has over 140 scored questions. MyOBI is really a baby step. We only have 30 questions, of which about 16 are scored. And what we really want to do is encourage the states to put the budget documents online, but after that we would need to expand the standards to say, well, what's the level of detail that you have in each one, right? In the year-end report, are you reporting outcomes as well, so that the public knows, that you have not only spent the money, but you have delivered what you promised. And in oversight, I think Selangor is to be commended for being the only state that has public account committee reports and findings, as well as select committees. So we would probably expand on that as well. And public participation, we may start formally scoring it so that we can see.
It's going to get tougher in the years to come. So let that be a warning to all the state governments out there. Michelle, what recommendations do you have for the state governments? So 76 out of 100 is still technically an A, but not a very strong A. So what recommendations do you have, not just for Selangor, but other state governments who want to improve their scores before the tests get harder?
Well, I do think that it's just a matter of having one or two people that's dedicated to this role of ensuring that we are communicating everything, not just with the budget, but everything that we do in the state to the public. So if states have a dedicated communications unit, it's worth investing in one. It doesn't have to be very complex because resources are limited, right? It can be one or two people to start with, to look into, hey, MyOBI as a start, right? Get some data, upload those documents, right? Create a repository, and then I think you'll be able to check off quite a lot of marks really just by doing that.
That's interesting because it strikes me that you can institutionalize the processes so that it becomes more formal. People know exactly where to go to get this information, and I think the state governments can also kind of SOP this process, right? Yeah. So that's the hope for the future, for future MyOBIs, and hope to have you back with a new and improved score next year.
Yeah. We look forward to that.
Thank you both for being on the show with me today. I appreciate it.
Thank you.
That's all we have for you on this episode of Consider This. I'm Melisa Idris, signing off for the evening. Thank you so much for watching, and good night.